Okay, so now that father has thoroughly attempted to humiliate Conrad, anyone want to get back to the main chapters? Horace spoke up, still shaking his head at his father's antics. Honestly, at this point, they needed to have a sit-down and talk more about how much they all needed to schedule some family therapy. I agree, we shouldn't just stop and make fun of our brothers. Even in small jest. Robert agreed, most definitely not wanting to get back to his boy. Do we happen to have the next chapter on hand? Or was it lost when everyone was rummaging through the piles which should be stacks and all of you know it? Calm your blueberry-colored man tits, brother, Lehman spoke up, looking like he was more reclining into his throne than sitting anymore. He had been like that ever since he saw that he had one single daughter, exactly one single daughter, in the future, and she was a damn dog. Not even a wolf, acting like a damned dog. Fine, fine. I will sort them during the next break myself along with Magnus. Robert answered, making Magnus sputter at him. Wait, why me? Because it is secretly annoying you to your core as well. Magnus shrugged, not willing to fight back on something that was annoying him as well. Fair point. Alright, the VID should be here somewhere. Horace began rummaging through the pile. Then, Horace paused and had a bit of an epiphany. Wait, why don't we just get the twins to find it? They always seem to find things inexplicably easily and just seem to do the impossible. Normally I would agree with you, brother, but Sanguinius held up the VID. I have been hanging on to it, waiting for us to get back to the main storyline. Lorgar snickered from the side. You've been holding on to it because you can't stand the idea of having us stop on a cliffhanger. This made Sanguinius huff in indignation, not appreciating how his whole unable to stand cliffhangers or interrupted viewings shtick was getting ahead of him. Just like you can't stop thinking of religion as so great, only to have the one founded upon your very teachings shoved in every single ugly way down your throat. Sanguinius rebuffed, one of his eyes twitching unnaturally. Jagatai let out a low whistle. It's like all of you have finally started to learn the way of Kogarian verbal lashing. Honestly, I give little to no shits at the moment, let's just play the VID. Muggos, catch. Sanguinius threw the VID at Muggos Lame, who managed to catch it effortlessly in one of his mechadendrites. Muggos Lame quickly began his work of inserting the VID and setting up the hollow projector. It seemed that every time a VID was played, everyone in this room got either more friendly with each other or grew in some way. Which was at first odd for the Muggos, being so close to the Omniscia. But perhaps it wasn't so bad, it was actually kind of nice. 204.M42, Makruj, Fortress of Hera. The VID opened up to reveal a close-up of Aegidius' face. His eyes were closed and he appeared to be far more relaxed than usual. And his arms were wrapped around the pillow that his head was lying on. Except, it wasn't a pillow. I missed you, Mom, came a tiny whisper from the child, even as a hand, far too slender, and moving with far too much grace to be human or even transhuman, reached down and brushed some idle blonde curls away from Aegidius' face. What took you so long? Aegidius groaned next, squeezing himself even tighter into his mother's lap. I missed you most, my sweet boy. She cooed at her son, hand scratching the top of his head and through his hair as she began to hum a song to him, a song that made no sense to any other except the two of them. She smiled when his ears pricked up and he began to hum with her. Never forget that. Mortarion, oh for fuck's sake, it's the witch. Conrad, can we burn her, father? Emperor, seeing as how Robert wants Aegidius to exist, then no. Robert, I have claimed no such thing. Emperor, so that's a dash. Robert, but I will. Fukin, keep that to yourself. Robert, I thought you were going to support me. Fukin, not if you scream it out loud. Robert, but I'm talking normally. Mortarion, shut your mouth, witch lover. Too fucking loud. Magnus, oh come on. You can't censor our brother just because his future self has gone down the path of dash. Mortarion, shut your mouth, you witch. Emperor, surprising chuckle low blow, boys. Play fair. Lame, wow, okay. Not really then. The Eldar woman with her long platinum hair in a top knot, over artificed armor and WYCH suit with overskirt looked almost comical next to the boy. But the maternal look on her face as she looked down at him was genuine. The Herald of Ennead was clearly softened and glad to be near her son. However, she didn't like how tense his soul felt when he was so close to her like this. Were the damned craft worlders right? Maybe she shouldn't have threatened them and was a bit too thorough with her warnings. Magnus, oof. Yeah, I can see that. Sanguinius, see what? Magnus, Ildari women are notoriously protective and downright homicidal against anyone who gets close to their children besides their fathers. Corvus, and how do you know that? Magnus, I read. Corvus, no, you do not get to use that one again. Magnus, use what, brother? Corvus, you say you read a lot, and while that may be a fair assumption and explanation for you usually, you seem to know a lot about Ildari customs and mannerisms, including your knowledge and practice of their language. What are you hiding, you damned witch? Robut, you do know I also speak Ildari and am highly familiar with their culture, right Corvus? Corvus, yes, that may be true, but he is being too precise for my liking. So I ask again, what are you hiding? Magnus, let's get back to it, shall we? Corvus, answer me. Magnus, no. Corvus, you can't just say no and then get to act like it's done with. Magnus, Rogel does that very thing all the time and no one questions it. Rogel, this is true. Conrad, give me an hour alone with him and I'll make him squeal. Emperor, okay, no torturing of your brothers, Kana boy. We all agreed to this. Their fault really. Everyone knew not to get between an Eldar Wych and her child. Still, his soul felt oddly strained more than usual, he was even tired and close to falling asleep. She was having to weave through their tenuous mind link with tender care, soothing the boy with her presence and alleviate some of his strain. When none of his strain lifted, she once more began to murmur her song to him, causing every single muscle in Ejediah's tiny body to relax as he let out a tiny breath of contentment. The song only they knew, they composed together since she first knew her boy, a song that would always comfort him. When he heard her song, the boy relaxed as he responded softly. He had been fighting sleep, but once their song was heard his eyes couldn't stay open and he soon was asleep, curled up next to his mother. She ran a hand through his curling locks, glad she was able to bring him peace in this moment. When she really looked at him and recalled how strained his soul was, it was hard to tell how young he still was. Far too young for what he was forced to endure and learn, even if he was over half his father's son. That was another thing. By human standards she guessed her husband to be a good father. A strict yet gentle one who knew how to properly raise a child. He was doing a fine job for human standards. By Eldar standards, well, she would be considered a terrible mother, much less him as well. For one thing, she was supposed to be by her son's side until he was at least a full Eldar cycle old. But well, he grew at the rate of a human and she admitted that duty came first and she missed out on what was his most critical years. At least she was able to convince everyone to allow her at least the first 2 years with him, which was barely a sixth of a cycle. Emperor, I swear, Eldar growth cycles are fucking weird. I still don't understand why they have to do everything in cycles of 12s. Fukin, why are they like that, father? Emperor, I really don't know. I really don't. Eldar are fucking confusing, cause one moment it's, I hate my kids, I wish they would grow up and not bother me to fucking touch my kids and I'll cut you with your own spine. Fucking crazy. Why can't they stay consistent? Rogel, father. Emperor, damn it, not again, what is it, Rogel? Rogel, why are you complaining about Eldar breeding, growth and child rearing styles? It is redundant to complain about the Eldar and their already confusing ways of life. You are being redundant. Emperor, I swear, Rogel, I will throw you out the airlock. Think about it, if they didn't raise their kids in such a shitty way, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't be a bunch of stuck-up, knife-eared assholes. Rogel, you make a very good point, father. Forgive me. Magnus, much like how you shouldn't have been the galaxy's shittiest father. Emperor, quiet Magni magic. Horus turned out just fine. Angron, angry groaning noises. Emperor, I said Horus. Speaking of time spent with close ones, she hadn't spoken to her husband since practically Aegadius' birth. Theirs was a marriage of convenience, which is what she told herself. And they knew that they wouldn't see each other often. But she felt the bond to him waver and strengthen nonetheless. She was tied to him until one of them would perish and their soul would be gone from this world. Robot, marriage of convenience. Right. I swear, I thought Eldar didn't do that type of thing. Aegadius softened yet again in her lap, his breathing becoming rhythmic even as his heartbeat slowed and he drifted off into a gentle, dreamless sleep. It was the least she could do for him. An Eldari child should never have been separated from his mother so early. If he was a true Eldar he would still be learning to speak, still dependent on his mother and father for every bit of guidance. As it was, he was strong. Oh, he was clumsy on the exterior, small, frail and sensitive. But she knew of his true nature. He had the exterior and soul strength of an Eldar. A powerful Eldar. But his mind and literal entrails were truly his father's. There was no mistaking that mind, that logistical and logical thinking along with what was essentially photographic memory, and his learning speed was unparalleled. Magnus, okay, that does complicate things. Robot, what do you mean? Magnus, well in theory In theory, Aegadius should have been the perfect half-breed. Combining both greats of each species while neglecting the worst. Every single healer and apothecary had even stated it as such. Magnus, that, essentially. And yet, his soul felt strained. The Astronomicon embedded within him took some power away of course, though no one was sure how it worked. She felt as if the soul that was her son wasn't just him. She knew him, she knew it. She carried him for almost 2 standard Terran years. She felt and guided his budding soul since day one. And ever since his birth, it felt wrong. Her precious son's soul felt like it was carrying a large tumor that grew only larger and stronger with each year. And she worried about exactly what it was doing to him. No one knew how or even why or how the Astronomicon was reborn inside of her son. The greatest farseers and librarians had tried weaving their way into Aegadius' mind and all had failed. Even herself. His mother. The one being in all of Eldar society which usually had full access to their child's mind while it was still developing. It was almost as if Aegadius' mind was protected. Protected by something so well fortified that it was nay unbreachable when it should have been open to her. Magnus whistles something powerful enough to overrule the bond between an Eldari mother and her child, now that is, very rare. Jagatai, how rare, to be precise. Magnus, so rare, that it is touted as fact that no one can come between the bond of the mother and child. Ferris, so what could be strong enough to do that, then? Magnus, from what I know, someone with so much power that they could essentially dash. Almost as if something had shared the space of his soul. Magnus, well, it is a possibility. Sanguinius, sharing space with another soul. Magnus, yes, but it would be the very essence of the word terrible. No body that we know of was meant to house 2 souls. Not even us, in order for the person to even survive he would need to be born with it. Which is technically, impossible. Especially since his mother would have been watching over and guiding his budding soul through the whole process as he would be formed. If anyone or anything tried to latch on and grow with his soul, she would have purged it immediately. That is the part that makes me wonder if it would be possible. Emperor, unless of course, that something masquerades itself and leeches on so early that it was always there. So nothing was off in the first place. That is most likely how the Astronomicon became embedded within him. Though I do not know how future me could have done it. Magnus, normally I'd agree, father, but there is the part where the Eldari mother guides and watches over the soul from the very moment of conception to birth. She would know that soul from all the ins, outs, and beyond. Emperor, there is one part you miss, however. If it becomes integrated, she can't do anything about it. Hence points at screen living Astronomicon. It is probably that tumor that she feels. Fulgrim, but what about birth? Emperor, pardon. Fulgrim, she said, ever since his birth. You two keep talking about it being there when she said ever since birth. Emperor, the Astronomicon couldn't have latched itself onto him when he was born. He would die. His soul would have been overwhelmed and simply would have been blown out of existence. Other things? Perhaps. But it would be painful. Painful to the point where I doubt the child would even survive. And if he would, it would not be a comfortable existence like the one Aegidius has. As Magnus said, the other soul would tear him apart, unless it's specifically crafted. Maybe. A gentle knocking on the door awoke Ivrain from her thoughts even as it opened and in walked Cato Sicarius, the marine that her husband had decreed as Aegidius' caretaker. Her Ildari hearing picked up on the faraway arguments between the custodes and the craft world farseers. Again. She nodded to the marine in greeting as she continued to run her fingers through her son's hair. Captain. I assume you bring news while you interrupt my time with my son. She jested lightly, not even looking at him as her eyes stayed glued to her precious boy. Indeed. Nothing urgent of course. He answered with ease. He had learned that her barbs meant nothing, Eldar women apparently were just protective of their children. Merely to update you on everything your son has done during your time away. She hummed, nodding as she held her son close to her. Physically, he has grown significantly since you last saw him. As you can see, he has grown over 6 inches and has gained the appropriate amount of weight needed for his height. She nodded, a hand going to gently pinch his chubby cheek. Mentally, he has grown exponentially. He has blown through his studies and we have gathered that private tutoring will take up most of his studies since public schooling is now beneath his needs and his war studies will proceed at a much more accelerated rate. He still has not met his social quotas, but that is no longer a problem. How so? He has recently gained a cousin and friend, young Lord Damien Kurz. They have been playing and studying together when possible. Robert feels a grin growing on his face. Conrad feels a scowl growing on his face. She smirked, shaking her head. And here I thought that man would never have a child. How funny. Her eyebrows furrowed as she continued to gently glide her fingers through Aegidius' hair, sending away a nightmare that was threatening to form in his sleep. The boy isn't anything like his father, is he? She inquired, hoping he wasn't going to be a bad influence on her son. Not at all. Damien is a sweet, kind boy and they complement each other well. I recommend you ask Aegidius once he awakens. Sicarius answered quickly, dispelling the notion. Even he could see that the interactions were good for his charge. Good. If that is true, then please allow more time for them to interact. It's important Aegidius has a peer, compared to none. Of course. Sicarius nodded. She smirked again, a laugh almost coming up. So how much trouble did Aegidius get into while I was gone? Not much this time. He continues to be impossibly clumsy and has broken around 72 bones over the last time you were here. Scrapes and bruises have been daily, even with the custodes and myself watching him. Robert, 72? 72 bones? How? How is that possible? Jagatai, drunk, angry little midgets. Robert, he isn't on Kogaris, Jagatai. He isn't riding a horse. He's being kept safe inside the fortress with the custodes themselves guarding over him. Jagatai, funny how you think children only break bones when outside on a horse. That shows you know almost nothing about the little angry midgets. Robert, and you do because. Jagatai, do you have any idea how many children there are on Kogaris? Especially with how open my world is, how we have a culture of sharing and open homes. Do you have any idea how many times I am attacked by hordes of children? I am around them most of my time on Kogaris, you cannot escape them. So might as well learn about them. Angren, I don't give two shits about children. They run away from me anyway. But they do so from all of us. Transhuman dread and all that crap. Emperor, exactly. So why don't the ones on Kogaris fear you? Jagatai, I don't know. Robert, are we all beginning to take the Rogel way out of things now as an excuse? Jagatai, yes. Rogel, I had no inclination that there was a way to get out of verbal corners by using the same words and actions that I do and claim it as a style. She nodded along sadly at that true unplanned part which left the apothecaries and healers baffled even now. Physically, nothing was supposed to impair her son. In fact, according to his genes, he should be much, much more agile. Flowing in his walk and running pace better than an Eldar. Almost as good as a Primarch. Yes, that was the rather harsh truth. The Emperor had made the Primarches better than even the strongest Farseers. To refer to them as Monkey would be an insult to themselves. They were not only faster and stronger in every way. They flowed with such unmatched killing potential and grace that upon her husband's awakening in his temple she was left stunned. Emperor, leans back with a smug grin. Yes. I am that good. Robert Guilliman, supposedly the less warlike of his brothers, had strode into the Daemons and Chaos Space Marines like a Wraithbone weaver to his craft. Cutting and slashing and destroying with such efficiency that she suspected her escort even became envious. She admitted that now that may have been the first time she found she had seen a human as an equal. Robert, wait, really? Ferris, ah yes, that was when you punched a Terminator through a marble column. Lorgar, and got so mad you became Angren for a second. Robert, no, I think I got that mad when you, Lorgar, raided, never mind. I'm too more of. Pleased that she was impressed with me. Fukin, why? Robert, I don't know. It just feels nice. The sound of arguing on the other side of the door flared up for a second, and yet again, she was reminded of why she had rushed back to Makridge with all due haste. Aegidaios' powers had manifested. For the first actual time, his power was fully revealed. And it was terrifying. The raw energy of the Astronomicon blasting out of his body and opening a warp tear, all the while summoning the angels, the protectors of the Astronomicon's light, had been a sight never before truly seen. It showed just how much potential he had. But the cost and method of attaining it was wrong. Oh, so wrong. A Farseer lied dead because of it. Because he pushed when he should have waited and been patient. Pushing to see the extent of her son's power when he should have just been observing what was shown now. Emperor, slowly turns to Magnus. Very familiar description. Magnus, yes, it's all my fault. Completely me. You had nothing to do with it. At all. It's not like you didn't tell me anything about why the warp was dangerous, despite having plans to put me on the Golden Throne and make me your giant psychic beacon. Emperor, you know that you would have transcended if you would have done that at the proper time, right? But those plans went flying right out the window when a certain someone sacrificed his right eye to a tumor in the warp. Magnus, all because I was desperate and didn't know there was a flying squid in the warp who has a lot of power and was the one who took me away from home. Emperor, Sonny. Do you forget about the fact that I was there the whole time? And your adoptive father? Magnus, okay fine. I was wrong. But at least admit you did some wrong too. Emperor, I suppose I could have been more careful. Magnus, thank you. Emperor, should have put the Sisters of Silence around your gestation's capsule. Magnus, that doesn't make it, never mind. That's as much of an apology as I'm ever going to get from you. I swear, no wonder you're single. Emperor, technically I'm. Yet. She sighed again as she fixed the positioning of Aegidaios' head, making sure that he was lying with his cheeks on her thighs, face pointing away from her in order for him to be comfortable. Tell of the incident. She spoke then, in a more serious tone, causing Sicarius to stiffen unnoticeably to non-Eldari eyes. There isn't much to tell, my lady. Sicarius spoke earnestly. When I entered the room, I found Aegidaios surrounded by a golden glow, the Astronomicon's light ceasing its projection to the sky. Later, the navigator's report stated that it never truly ceased. Just redirected for that fraction of a second. All I did was take a hold of him and get him to safety. She listened, then deliberated. Her boy was powerful, and she had a feeling it must be from that tumor upon his soul. It wasn't his, it was always there, and suddenly the Astronomicon sprung to life as soon as it appeared. She just knew it had something to do with all of this, but she didn't have the information to build up her theory. For now, she could only focus on the here and now. And the here and now was that her son is exhausted, he did something great and strong, and now he was the subject of contention between her people and her husband's people. Again. What of the custodes? His guardians? Do they still cling to him and keep the craft worlders away? She didn't much care about the custodes when they had first arrived. believing the rumors of their strength and capabilities, just that. Exaggerated rumors and imperial propaganda. She was pleasantly surprised when they said that they wanted to guard her son. Emperor, they volunteered? The shit. Horus, what would cause the custodes to volunteer to watch over him? Emperor, I don't know. Maybe I ordered them before I died for some reason. Horus, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out half of what you and Magnus were saying about souls and everything. She was less than pleasantly surprised when her husband agreed practically immediately, questioning his choice and if truly they were the best guardians he could have. The Farseer with them at the time had quickly agreed and made his thoughts on the situation well known. Especially when he challenged the head of the custodes to a duel to who would hold the honor of being the prince's guardians. The custodes there had accepted on his Captain General's behalf, citing that the Captain General had expected this situation to develop. So they had moved to the training arena. And there, the Captain General had arrived. And her husband immediately began to chuckle. Then even laugh. She thought him gone mad. Something snapping in that brilliant mind of his. But then she saw the Captain General wipe out the Farseer as if he wasn't even there, doing so without even using a real weapon. Going so far as to use a training shock staff. And then proceed to do so with an entire host of Ildari warriors before he removed his helmet and declared himself Constantine Valder returned. Come to serve his emperor once more and his penance for failing to guard him so long ago, fulfilled. Emperor, holy shit! Constantine is still alive. Lehman, yes. Constantine. Crazy bastard is still alive. Lorgar, but how did he know that Aegidius would be the new emperor? Wasn't he just born when he arrived? Emperor, I'm not claiming to know exactly what my future self ordered them to do anymore. But the emperor was dead. Obviously. Dead but not gone. His soul was somewhere, obviously. Otherwise humanity would long ago have perished to the seething tides of the immaterium. If only she knew or had an idea on what the soul of the emperor was like, so she could aid in the search. Lorgar, wait, you're not actually gone. Emperor, I am not that easy to kill. You should know this by now. Magnus, your soul, or at least a fragment of it, is still out there obviously. Question is where? Emperor, even if I knew, I highly doubt we can find a way to tell them. Yes, my lady. They continue their vigilance around the young lord and protect him from all outside harm. Outside the harm he inflicts on himself. Sicarius answered, pride shining through him. Not many, if any Marines could ever boast on working so closely with the custodes, after all. Good. I don't want a single hair on my son's head to be harmed. If I could, I'd slaughter all who meant him harm myself. But I will settle for you and the custodes to keep him safe. It took more effort than she was prepared for to keep from baring her teeth at the idea of anyone hurting her precious offspring. Anything else I must know about him? Or shall I ask him when he awakens? Nothing else, at the moment. Good. Then please, allow me time with my son. She listened as he left the chamber, leaving mother and son to sit together again. She was happy to have just a moment like this with her son. Worrying about him, caring for him, just having the moment with him. Knowing that every time she left him behind, she may not see him again. Sometimes she worried that maybe he didn't have as strong of a bond to her compared to what he should. Maybe if she had stayed behind and cared for him and stayed by his side, then maybe she would fix that. But if she did, then what of the Inari and their plans? They still had to figure out how to get the last crone's word from the palace of the whore. Once they had that last crone's word, then Ennead would be summoned, he would finally be here to hopefully end the reign of She Who Thirsts. And there was still the full integration of the Ildari into human society and the countless gives and takes between both sides. Or maybe she was worrying over nothing and he loved and cared for her as much as any Ildari child would. She just worried over him so much, ever since she first heard his cries and was separated from him for those 2 agonizing days. From birth to this very moment, she worried over him, and still would worry over him even after. There was a huge difference between an infant crying because they were born and were experiencing life, and the cries of an infant who was in true, unyielding pain. She nearly gagged at the memory, curling more towards her boy. The memory of his birth was a terrible one, one that should have been one of happiness, of rejoice to finally have her son in her arms. But it was a memory of her son in the worst pain she could imagine, with him crying and writhing and turning and... Gods, her baby suffered so much. Ever since he took his first breath, she couldn't access his soul anymore, she couldn't fully utilize their bond, their connection. It was like someone was strangling him. Strangling him until he nearly died and had been separated from her for 2 agonizing days. Separated from her while he screamed in agony, screaming until he suddenly stopped, and nearly was burnt out from the trauma. She made a vow to him that day when her son was finally in her arms and she saw the extent of damage done to him, how his own body was nearly burnt out, how his nerves were almost completely fried away. She vowed to him she would protect her precious boy. She would do anything to protect him. If it meant she had to kill her own people to keep him safe, if it meant she had to damn planets to their bloody ends, if it meant she had to take on the whole galaxy and beyond, she would do it without a second thought. She wasn't able to help and protect her baby all that time ago, it killed her inside to know that. She would always carry the guilt that there was nothing she could have done to help him. So she will help him now. Now and forever. Emperor, wait. What? Magnus, okay, that is a tiny bit too far. I can stomach a lot, but, no. Robot, too much detail. Magnus, Mortarion, you're up. Mortarion, why me? Magnus, cause you're the apothecary and apparently we look to you to figure out the biological side of everything. So do your thing. Mortarion, normally I would say, sure, but no. Because that wasn't physical. Nothing causes that much trauma. No disease, no type of mental impurity, nothing that I know of. This is your area. Magnus, my area. Well, I suppose. The only thing I can think of that would nearly kill someone and nearly fry out their body like that would be, pauses and turns to the Emperor, do you think he was soul-bound? Emperor, I mean. Possibly. I'm not sure. He technically wouldn't have survived at all. And if he did, there would be severe consequences like going blind or a severe mutation. Magnus, but he is half Ildari and half Primarch, and apparently from what we saw earlier and deducted, the Astronomicon appeared after he was born. Going through a soul binding at birth, suddenly having the Astronomicon there, and now that I think about it, it would explain how he doesn't really feel any physical pain. I just feel as if we are missing a crucial piece of information here. Sanguinius, then how about we talk less and watch more? Magnus, but there are multiple things we need to talk about. Sanguinius, do it after the vid, I swear. She loved her son. And she had a feeling her husband did just as much. And then the door opened again and she looked up to see who would dare to interrupt on her private time with her son. Only to see an unarmored Robert Guilliman, standing there in all of his tired splendor in his Ultramarine uniform. It seemed, the second part of her questions would soon be answered. 204.M42, the warp? Sanguinius, what? Why are we going here? By the hell winters of Fenris, damn ya back to whatever hell ya crawled out of. Was the cry of fury that came from Leman Russ as he hacked a daemon apart with his sword, with another coming to fill the now empty space which died to a bolt shot from one of his sons. How long until you're fix the fracking Geller fields? He yelled into the Vox link, all the while holding onto and keeping Freya out of harm's way with one hand even as his other held onto the sword of Bane Light. Leman, am I in the thick of battle, lost in the warp again, while holding onto my daughter in one arm and fighting daemons with the other? Rogel, yes. Almost my lord. Just need to reroute power. Well, hurry it up. He demanded, even as his sword cleaved through another daemon, sending it back screaming into the warp. By the snows of Fenris, how did this go so horribly wrong? He was just trying to travel from Fenris to Makruj, maybe show Freya a bit more about being a good leader when it all went wrong. They were en route to Makruj when something happened to the Astronomicon. The damn thing flickered, blinding the navigator just long enough that he managed to guide them off course. The damn navigator was screeching about angels and while panicking, they were now stuck in the middle of the fracking warp and fighting for their lives with their Geller field down. The fracking navigator overloaded it in his bout of mania. Magnus, oh, so that's what it caused. Ferris, well, with him being the Astronomicon, of course it would affect other people. Lehman, I can't believe I'm lost in the warp again. Emperor, yes of course. But not to this level. It was merely a flicker. The navigator must have been unexperienced. Lehman, I swear. I spend more time in the warp than the nerd does. Magnus, father is probably right on this one, the navigator must have just gotten confused and steered the ship out of the warp current. Lehman, frack all of you. Emperor, Did you say something, Lehman? Lehman, frack you too. In the arm of Lehman, Freya held onto her dough with everything her little body had. She couldn't even scream as she looked at the monsters that appeared in their ship, only bury her face into her doll's armor and hope it would all be over. She hated how she was so small, so weak, so useless. She was too much of a baby to help. She was too much of a baby that she ended up holding her dough back. It was damn near impossible to get a good look at what was even happening on the bridge. It was a mess of wolves, daemons, blood, weapons, and screams of either death, anger or fear from the rest of the crew. But worst of all, he was fighting with a handicap. He had to keep Freya in his arm. If he left her anywhere she would be vulnerable. And if he moved too quickly or wasn't careful enough she could get hit. A single hit and she'd be gone. Then he felt as Freya slipped from his grasp. Reeling around, he spotted the feathered, bird-looking daemon with an outstretched hand, muttering incantations in some language and using what looked to be telekinesis to draw Freya to him. The little girl fought against it, but was unable to break the hold and only cried out to her dough with a howl of her own. Lehman, Freya. Horus, oh shit. He used his other hand to reach for his bolter. But by the time he had it aimed at the daemon, it would have been far too late. Lehman's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, over a ton of fur, razor-sharp claws and fanged jaws slammed into the daemon, tearing it limb from limb in a matter of seconds before running over to Freya and making her stay behind it. Good job, Freaky! Lehman praised the black-maned wolf, even as he slashed through yet another daemon spawn. How much more fracking time before the fields were back up? Lehman, oh thank the Alfather Freaky is still alive, that bastard of a wolf. Emperor, no problem sonny. Lehman, you know what I meant. Conrad, just wait. Then more of the Neverborn spawned, and rushed directly for Freya. They didn't get far. The ancient wolf pounced with unnatural speed and strength, tearing off limbs as easily as if they were paper, biting through flesh as easily as softened foods. But he wasn't fast enough. Freaky! Freya cried out, her voice full of desperation as a daemon's claws raked against Freaky's rear thigh, causing the creature to let out a yelp before the daemon was swiftly demolished with bolter fire. She quickly covered her ears from the deafening sound of the roaring guns, eyes screwed shut, but she peeked back at Freaky, hoping the old wolf wasn't. Lehman, damn it all, Conrad! Conrad, you're welcome! Lehman, that wolf is my brother Conrad. I swear, if something dash. Gellerfield online. A cry suddenly came from the helm even as the Neverborn were dragged screaming back to whence they came, with the fury of the space wolves chasing them back out until not a single one of the filth were on their ship any longer. Thank Fenris! You're alright, lass. Russ felt his muscles relax as he ran over and checked his daughter for any injuries. He hugged her to him, truly grateful that she had managed to escape without even a scratch. Freya hugged her as hard as she could, her heart pounding from the fear of battle, the frustration, and simple sensory overload. Then she remembered and quietly spoke up, Freaky's hurt. She wanted to squeeze herself out of his grip and run to the now barely moving wolf, but she was afraid of letting her father go after everything that happened. It was lying down, looking exhausted and panting with all its might. Rune Priest! Russ demanded, and not even a second later, a Rune Priest hurried to the front and was kneeling by the black-maned wolf's side. Freya was lowered to the ground and the little girl was able to still hold onto her but now could comfort Freaky as well as she could. What's wrong with him? Freya demanded, going to the wolf's head, as big as her entire body, and petting the wolf's whimpering head and nose. Her tiny hands unable to do much to help the old companion. The rune priest's Narthesium scanned the wound, before eliciting a loud jarring beep. Poison. The rune priest swore, beginning to take some amulets and bones hanging off of his armor, applying them to the wound while uttering a chant. Lehman, oh no, no no no. Can't you bandage it? Or draw out the poison? Lehman asked with escalating worry. Freaky was with him for his entire life. It was a miracle that he was so drawn to Freya even though they shared the same blood. But if he needed to let the old wolf go? No, Lord Russ. The rune priest spoke, even as he reached for some foul-smelling oils that would make even the hardiest of the rout retch. It isn't a physical wound. Can you save him? The rune priest poked about the wound for a bit, causing the wolf to growl in pain before being comforted by his tiny master. Perhaps, we need to get him to Macrage as soon as possible. The librarians there can help me. Lehman, lets out a deep breath. Thank Fenris. Fulgrim, I wonder if this trip will scar Freya. Lehman turned to the helm. Get the damn navigator to get us underway as soon as bloody possible and get us to Macrage. A chorus of ayes was his answer. He didn't much care for them at the moment, however, as his attention once again turned back to his oldest companion whose massive head was being cradled by his daughter. Why did everything have to go to utter shite whenever he needed to travel? For Helvite's sake. Macrage, fortress of Hera. Aegidius at the moment began to squirm in his mother's lap. The headache he was suffering from and the unknown pain made him uncomfortable. He couldn't stop seeing ships stuck in the tides of the warp in his mind, despite being given a dreamless sleep. Ivrain quickly soothed him, angry that her son kept having moments like this where he was hurt or scared or suffering or... She swore, she was going to find out how to give her son peace. Is he all right? She heard her husband ask. He was closer now. His approach unnoticed since she was so busy worrying over their son. I am merely soothing him. He has been having a terrible headache and I am giving him the peaceful rest he needs and deserves. She paused, wondering if telling him everything was the right thing to do. According to their human ceremony, she was supposed to be truthful to him, so his soul has been strained. Magnus, yet. I wonder why. He quickly kneeled down beside her. She had been sitting on a set of cushions on the floor with their son. Cushions were so easy, she didn't understand why everyone had to have a chair for everything, human customs she supposed. He checked over their son, worry evident on his face. How bad? Is he in pain? Has anything happened to him? No. No, he's fine now. I calmed him down. She relaxed, letting him come closer. If it had been anyone else other than him, she would have bared her teeth and growled at them to get back. Well, there were others on a short list who were allowed close to him, but that was beside the point. He's asleep. The Primarch appeared to relax slightly at that. Good. She glanced at him, looking him over. I assume your armor is being repaired. He slowly nodded. First opportunity one got to finally shed it in, years. I haven't had it off since Aegidius was born. I do recall a few times it was off before he was born, you know. How else would he be here? She snorted at him, cracking a smile at him. Robot, chokes on the cup of water that he is drinking. Fukin, oh no. Jagatai, father, please skip. Emperor, yeah, no. I'm not watching you two flirting with each other. Muggos. Lame, of course, Omniscia. The projector didn't stop or skip. Emperor, very funny, Muggos. Now please, skip. Lame, presses the rune a few times, but nothing is happening. Oh Omniscia. I am scared. Emperor, Lehm, please skip dash. That is not my point. He spoke in a slightly louder tone, before mellowing down. I am sorry, the stress is getting to me these days. I recognized it as a jest, I merely, he waved a hand, knowing the emotions he was feeling unexplainable to one of her kind. Forgive me, I tried to lighten the mood. Her smile didn't drop but did lessen as she looked him over again. You are radiating stress, which is to be expected. I assume you came here to see him as well. Emperor, oh wait, no, crisis averted. No flirting. Robot, usually I would say you're being childish, but I don't want my private life being shown to everyone here. He looked down at their son, sleeping so peacefully in his mother's lap, and allowed a small grin to appear on his tired face. I have indeed. He ran his much coarser fingers through his son's curled hair, causing Aegidius to shift closer to them subconsciously. I do not spend nearly enough time with him these days. I am a terrible father. She nodded, that tender look on her face returning as she gently scratched behind Aegidius' ear. Neither do I, trust me, you are not a terrible father. If anything, by Yildari standards. I am a terrible mother. I have often wondered if my absence hurts him more than he shows. Sometimes I wonder if he has bonded to me enough. Since I cannot peer into his soul. Do not speak such nonsense, Ivrain. Guilliman chided gently. You are as good of a mother as you can be. He is obviously utterly taken with you, and me. He sighed. And one day I am going to have to take him to war, this boy of ours who I can remember learning how to walk and talk as if it were merely yesterday. Robert groans uncomfortably at that realization. Magnus wants to comfort him but stays silent, since now is not the time. Fulgrim wants to be there, but is worrying about his own problems. Jagatai, wondering why he is so concerned, it wasn't that bad once it happened. Lion, wondering why the fuck he is not training the kid more than he is now. Time is a terrible mistress, isn't she? He's still so young. If he were full Yildari, he'd still be learning all about that, he'd still be having trouble with speaking, with walking. Everything does feel as if it is passing too quickly. She smoothed some of his hair from his face. How long until he is taken? I still have trouble figuring out how humans age. Guilliman took a deep breath before letting out an even deeper sigh. If the circumstances will allow it, no sooner than 15, otherwise, a few years. 15. She stopped herself from shrieking at that, doing the math in her mind. She didn't like the numbers she came up with. He will barely be older than 2 cycles. He'd still be. I mean. I don't, she trailed off, letting out a growl of frustration. She hated how complicated this gets. Time is a terrible mistress. Her husband spoke, echoing her words from before. The one advantage to him being part Primarch is that by the age of 15, if the apothecaries are correct, his genes will finish driving him to an equivalent of 25 standard Terran years of age. Along with the Astaroot's organs that he already has inside of him, they will fully mature at that age. He shouldn't have to go through all of that. Then again, he shouldn't have to live in a time like this where we can barely be with him, aren't there to guide him, and can barely feed him. She let out a long-suffering sigh. If only I could have found the last one, then maybe our enemies would be lessened. But it's somewhere I can't get to by myself. I'm sorry. Do not be. It was an inevitability. Father always was going to die at some point or another. Of course, it happened exactly at the worst time possible. Old bastard almost took his empire to an early grave. Guilliman scoffed, a frown now appearing on his face, before softening yet again as he looked at Aegidius. And to think I promised myself that I would be a better father than that bitter, spiteful, ungrateful creator of an emperor. Emperor, sputters but then realizes they already went over this once. You are. From everything you have talked about and what little I do know, you definitely are better than him. For one thing, you actually remember our son's name. She chuckled slightly, enjoying her own jest. There is nothing wrong with feeling some anger towards our situation. Anger? Guilliman asked with a dangerous edge surrounding his harmonious voice. I am not angry at my father, Ivrain. I am furious. And if I ever get my hands on him or have a chance to talk to him ever again, I am going to give him a piece of my mind. She nodded, forgive me. I'm not trying to lessen your feelings on him. Merely trying to, she searched for the right word, her ears rotating just slightly as she thought. Empathize. She nodded again, yes, empathize. He nodded back in appreciation. I suppose you don't have much to compare it with, so thank you. I appreciate the notion. He smiled slightly. You know, all this time we spend separate from one another makes me forget that I do genuinely enjoy your company. Jagatai, smooth. Emperor, Muggos. Press the skip rune. Please. Lame, I am trying amnesia but the machine spirit refuses to listen. Ferris, let me try and talk to it. Anything to not watch this. Robot, sliding down his throne slightly, trying to hide his face. She went a little red in the cheeks, ears rotating to capture as much of his voice as possible. She doubted he knew the little ticks she showed. That's agreeable. And here I thought you'd have war be your mistress when away from me. She had no idea why she just felt the need to jest when near him, it made little to no sense. But here she went, another just slipping out. She stiffened when she felt Aegidius snuggle her, suddenly aware that she has their son in her lap. I never liked war. Her husband was quick to respond. One day, even during the Great Crusade itself, I had hoped that it would be all over so that I could finally retire and govern Ultramar. To see it truly prosper. Maybe even truly settle, get married, have a family, he let out a mirthless chuckle at the irony of it all. It appears that I traded. The war only needs me more. He reached out with a coarse hand, flowing gracefully before trailing it over his wife's cheek all the while looking in between her and their peacefully sleeping son. But I govern Ultramar, and I have a wonderful son and a beautiful wife. Perhaps fate has a cruel sense of humor. Ferris, oh, it's refusing to skip. Emperor, what? Jagatai, again brother, surprisingly smooth. Robot, thank you, Jagatai. I really don't want this to be shown, though. Lame, yes amnesia. It's refusing to skip. Emperor, Ferris please you're our last hope. Ferris, I will try, father. She wanted to retort but fell silent when she felt his hand on her cheek. She didn't want to comment on how her soul and heart pounded when he got closer, and how it settled into a calm state when contact was made. Maybe her mother had been right, everything did change when you have made a vow of eternal partnership with someone. She had to calm herself, before speaking, not focus on how she quite liked feeling his hand on her flesh. Could he feel how hot she felt? If it is cruel, then perhaps it can be forgiving. She swallowed, knowing it was a coincidence that she leaned a bit closer to his touch. Ever since I was young, I didn't think I'd ever find an eternal partner, or settle down. I saw it as something that would drain away my independence. Yet here I am, proven wrong. I have an amazing son who I love with all my heart, and a husband who she trailed off, her face getting a bit too hot. How did she describe these feelings without a full psychic link in the limits of Imperial High Gothic? Her husband smiled wearily. I am not going to supplement the word, though there is one that might describe how you feel. He let out a chuckle. Though, there is an action which too exists in the culture of the Ildari and requires no words to be spoken. She looked down, back to their sleeping son. He is right there. She supplied, suddenly feeling a little giddy when his voice got like that. Emperor, yes. He is right there. Don't do it. Oh, I am not thinking of that type of intimacy. He supplied, leaning in slightly closer. Ferris, oh thank the machine spirit for Robot's impotence with women. Robot, excuse you. Excuse me for not, immediately knowing, what, she trailed off, even more, her senses going slightly haywire as she felt his breath getting closer to her. She didn't enjoy the idea of kissing, but, well, it wasn't so bad with him. She needed more practice to have a better idea on it and to have a better judgment of oh, screw it. The family collectively, Robot, all of you are children. Magnus, petty children. She closed the distance between them, feeling his lips come into contact with her own. She felt that shiver ran through her body as that bolt of pleasure ran through her, her senses being overwhelmed with him. They felt rough, yet soft, as if he was waiting for the life-giving water after crossing through a desert planet. He certainly reciprocated and acted like it though. He held her close to him, drinking in the touch and feeling of having her with him. She was impossibly soft to the touch, unlike anything he had ever felt in his life before meeting her. The two of them molded perfectly, lips moving together in a type of dance that could easily become more soft, more intense, or even erotic if they so wished. It felt as if she was drowning in the feeling of him and her end. Shit, she had Aegidius on her lap. But this felt so good, maybe they could leave him sleeping. The door to Aegidius' room was suddenly flung open, 2 guardsmen quickly rushing in, followed by Cato Sicarius and multiple custodes. Emperor, I never thought I would ever say this in my entire life, but thank fuck for Cato Sicarius. Angron, thank you Cunto Shitarius. My lord, I apologize for the disturbance, but these guardsmen began Sicarius, only to wheel to an absolute and sudden stop along with the rest of the people when they saw their primarch and his wife sucking face over their comatose son. The 2 pulled away just a small amount, almost able to fall back in with a single gesture. They did look over Robut's shoulder, spying the people who barged in. Maybe if they send them away, and find a way to get Aegidius to stay asleep, they could. Robut Guilliman spoke a frighteningly familiar voice at a time he wanted the least to hear it. The primarch took a deep breath and turned around to face the man that, of course, would ruin everything. Robut, wait a second, that can't be. Eldrad Ulthrun. Robut, oh shit, it is. Shrine World Laphise, Guardsman Outpost. Sanguinius, and here we see how Eldrad came into all of this. Hey, Lucius. The guardsman from outside the checkpoint yelled at his friend. Rations are here. Lucius, who was lying down on his bunk in the 2-man outpost in the remote wastes of the Shrine World of Laphise, guarding a completely unused webway portal. Lucius liked it here, and his buddy did too. They both requested for a transfer immediately after seeing the incident of a boy climbing the wall in the dead of the night. They took the most remote, safest, and most boring post they could find listed. No one wanted it for that very reason. No action. No chances of promotion. Low pay. An absolute dead end for anything even resembling a military career. Angron, pussies. Corvus, now hold on. Maybe they have an alternative reason as to why they joined up. However, Titus and Lucius joined up simply because they were promised food, clothing, and shelter above their heads. Both having grown up orphans on the streets of Macrage Magnus Civitas. Corvus, c. Angron, still call them pussies. And they got all of that here. With no family to support, and no friends aside from each other. It was perfect. What did they send? Lucius asked, now walking out of the tiny building. Oh well, let's see here, Titus spoke even as he slammed the container down and pried off the lid. Oh ho ho, ration bars like always and, oh, holy Emperor Recaf. Perking up, Lucius spied the ration, smiling at the most holiest and loved of all rations. Recaf. The blood and spirit of any guardsman. Oh fucking amazing. Lucius laughed as he grabbed a packet and went inside to hastily set some water to boil. Life was good. Make it strong. I got the bars. Titus added on as he joined Lucius in the tiny building, sitting down on his bunk and opening 2 grey-looking bars of tasteless nutrients. Oh yeah, don't worry. 3 packets. Sanguinius, I don't see Eldrad here, just guardsmen. Why are we watching this again? Why didn't we stay at the fortress of Hera? All the important stuff is there. Emperor, calm down Sanguinius. I'm sure that we will find out soon. I'm just happy we moved away from that god-awful scene with Dash. Robut, it's not like I had a choice in that too, you know. Emperor, you were into it, hush. Fuck. Never thought I would be happy about joining up with the guard. A month of training hell. All worth it. Titus rubbed his hands together even as Lucius brought over the recaf in 2 separate metal cups and they both dunked the ration bars in the recaf. Knowing that they were way too hard to just eat. Robut, a month? A month. How? How did the standards drop this low? Horus, I think that is something we are better off not pondering about, lest we want to keep our sanity. Lion, that could account for a lot that happens in these vids, you know. These better than the last ones? Lucius asked, knowing that the previous ones needed to be soaked for an entire hour before they could even bite off a piece. Quartermaster said that they are Martian stock. Though the dating on it doesn't give me hope. Titus answered with a slight shudder. Really? How bad? 31st millennium bad. Really scraping the bottom. Lucius stared at them, looking from different angles as he tried to figure out if they were safe or not. They are still edible? Hard to believe that. Well, unless your dainty ass wants to go forage, the quartermaster said that they won't kill us. Family, slowly turned to Morty. Mortarian, how the fuck am I supposed to know? I'm not the ration expert. Perturabo, yeah, but how would a person's dash? Mortarian, it goes without saying to not eat expired rations, that's common sense. Emperor, ah yes, the elusive superpower of common sense. Amazing. Okay fine, he had a point. And foraging wasn't the best job in the galaxy. Why did Titus have to be the voice of reason? It was usually him. Ah well, chin up, Titus spoke up. We still got the recaf. That we do. The two clanged their cups together in celebration. It was the little things that made the best memories after all. They brought the cups of steaming, delicious recaf to their lips. The scent tingling in their noses as they tipped and tasted. Bang! And now their cups fell out of their hands, the recaf spilling around their feet. They both wondered how their luck could possibly have caused something else that was completely weird and crazy to happen around them again. What the fuck was that noise? Titus groaned, looking after his spilled recaf. Me, I'm afraid. A voice as soft and smooth as silk spoke from the entrance of their outpost, and the two turned to see an Eldar, dressed in black and white wraithbone armor and wielding a staff. Emperor, see Sanguinius. Our patience was rewarded. Horus, in all fairness, it was only after seeing the height of just how far the Imperium's standards have fallen. Lorgar, only place we can go now is up. The two guardsmen glanced to each other, then back to the Eldar, then back to them, going back and forth so much they began to get dizzy until they had to grab each other to steady each other. They may have spun in place, but only they and the Eldar knew that if it was even true. Once steadied, they wrapped an arm around each other and turned away, whispering to each other. Lucius. Is that one of those crafting Eldar? Titus quickly spoke to his friend, who poked his head out from their little huddle to look back at the Eldar, who was waiting for their shenaniganry to end. Magnus, did he just say crafting Eldar? The fuck? Jagatai, to be fair to the guardsmen, they most likely didn't receive the best education. Robot, 1 fucking month. I think so. Did you mean that as a singular or plural, though? Lucius dived back into their huddle. Wait, what? Are you sure? Are there more? Lucius poked his head from the huddle again, the Eldar waving at them lightly. Behind him seemed to be a small group of them behind him. He dived back into the huddle. Yeah, I think that's plural. Oh my Emperor! Titus panicked a bit. He was trying to figure out if it was the crafting Eldar or the spiky Eldar they weren't or were friends with. Is that a crafting Eldar? There is no such thing as a crafting Eldar. Humans, just craft worlders and bone singers if you want to be specific. The Eldar spoke up, unsure if he should be amused with their antics. Lucius ignored the Eldar and looked him over a few times before going back to Titus. Yes. Oh my Emperor! Titus cried out, holding onto Lucius and freaking out. I thought this was supposed to be a worry-free, no work involved, nothing weird happens post. The Eldar sighed. These two idiots weren't even listening or caring he was there, were they? Emperor! I have no words. Lehman is beginning to see the funny side. Robot, I just hope we don't see them again. Seeing as how? This is the second time we have seen them. Horus, what do you mean? They were watching the fortress wall. When Damien climbed it. Horus, oh, they might come back then. Robot, what? The VID pointed that out. But you weren't paying attention. Robot, I hate you both. Well fuck, we're in the guard now man, we gotta do something. Shit, well, technically that gate is supposed to be inactive. We gotta bring this to the higher UPS. Yeah we do. Call it in. Horus, oh shit, they are actually getting it together. I think they finally may have got it together. A bone singer leaned into the Farseer and whispered, causing the Farseer to slowly nod. Lucius turned around, grabbed his lasgun and spoke. Hi. I'm Lucius and welcome to Imperium Secundus. How can I help you? Oh for fuck's sake, he panicked and said something a common orator would say to another on a vox call. One of the bone singers outright lost it, unable to be around these humans for much longer. The sounds coming from inside the helmet were either muffled laughter or the snapping of patience. The farseer appeared to be less inflicted. Horus, facepalms ugh. Lehman, actually cracking up. I am Eldrad Ulthian, farseer of Craft World Ulthwi. The farseer spoke. I have come to talk to Robert Gilliman, my old friend and trusted acquaintance. Now, please, stop pointing the lasguns at us before I chop off your arms. We mean you no harm. Sorry, sir, bit of a habit. Titus spoke up, putting his lasgun away. But he did wonder if it was true. Not many people could say they're friends with Gilly. Wait, hold on. Hold on, are you sure you're not lying or dash? Lucius smacked Titus' head. What are you doing? Don't make them angry. Speak appropriately and with tact. You need to show that you aren't a complete pushover. Lucius cleared his throat before turning to Eldrad yet again. You wouldn't happen to mean the Lord Regent, would you? Horus, at least they have a modicum of respect and decorum. I would. Though his title and position was Lord Commander last we met. However, he was always the ruler of this realm. Of course, we shall immediately dash. Lucius stopped mid-sentence. Realizing that the farseer did, in fact, refer to that Robert Gilliman. He slowly turned to Titus. We need to go to headquarters. Horus, no way did they finally get it. Robert, I think it's annoying you more than it is me at this point. The bone singer leaned towards Eldrad once again. By Isha's beauty. I think they somehow figured it out. Lucius let out a deep groan and felt himself sag against the wall, even as Titus did the same on the opposite end of the door they were guarding. They had successfully managed to convince headquarters to send the necessary transport after reporting that in fact, yes, the webway portal had activated, yes, the Eldar were there, and yes, the rations were completely fine and couldn't cause a hallucinogenic effect. Despite how old they were. Now they were forced to guard the door while the lieutenant of the garrison talked to the Eldar and supposedly arranged transport back to Macrage for them. Lucius and Titus meanwhile were simply eager to get back to their remote outpost and brew up another pot of recaf. But no. They had to guard the door, because there weren't thousands of other guardsmen manning the base. The door suddenly opened and out walked the lieutenant along with the party of Eldar. Ah, Guardsman Titus and Lucius. The two guardsmen in question glanced at each other, dopey looks on their faces. You two are hereby relegated to escort duty of the Eldar party back to Macrage. You are to see to their safe arrival, and then report the news directly to Lord Gilliman should he wish it as such. Afterwards report to the guard headquarters of Macrage for Red as King. Congratulations, guardsmen, there might be awards for your efforts. Titus began to let out a small cry, shoulders shaking as he doubled over crying into his hands. Lucius patted his back, tempted to cry as well. The lieutenant sniffed happily, always happy to see that there are guardsmen out there who take their duties to heart like you two. Corvus, oh no. Conrad, what? Corvus, something tells me that the commander is going to misinterpret most of their actions. Lehman, I fucking hope so. Titus began to cry harder at that. So hard in fact that the lieutenant came over and put a hand on his shoulders. Your patriotism is inspiring, Guardsman Titus. And a model of behavior to others. I shall personally send word of your accomplishments ahead to Macrage headquarters. No, Lucius groaned out between his own sobs now coming up. There goes his hopes of him and Titus having a peaceful service. And humble as well. The lieutenant nodded in approval even as a Valkyrie powered up in the distance. Corvus, or all of them. Lehman, rolling on the floor laughing at the unfortunate fates of the two guardsmen. Angron, that's what you get if you run from the front lines, assholes. Macrage, the fortress of Hera. Gilliman stood then, raising himself fully to his considerable height and towering over everyone in the room. In the eyes of the Eldar, they did not miss his stance and how he stood as a wall for his family. I assume you have come here for a reason? He asked then. Eldrad reached up and removed his helmet, showing his surprisingly tired-looking face. I reluctantly have come to evoke the Treaty of Eden and ask for asylum in your realm. Robut, Treaty of Eden? Is that what it's called? Emperor, really? Really? Really going for the full symbolism, aren't they? Garden of Eden my ass. Going so far as, just. Ugh. Robut, what? Who? What are you talking about? Eden is the name of a moon in Ultramar. The treaty was most likely signed there because it is on the outskirts. Rogel, father. Are you already going senile in your old age? Emperor, fuck the upshut Rogel. Rogel, that made no sense dash. Emperor, Perturabo. Perturabo, smacks Rogel. Guilliman nodded at this, turning back to his family behind him. Spying on his sleeping son and his wife who was fanning herself, he made the decision to move this meeting. Follow me, then. I assume you are quite aware of how angry Eldar mothers get when anyone interrupts their child's sleep. Eldrad looked by Guilliman then and spotted the Prophet of Ennead along with their surrogate offspring. He did have to have a moment of pause, as he noticed how the child's soul shone beyond brightly. Indeed. He said, nonchalantly. Let us move to a place more adequate for our negotiations. He led them from the chamber. Robut did sneak a glance back at Ivrain and Aegidius, watching how serene they looked. Almost as if tempting him to go back and forget negotiations. He turned away and continued on, leading the Eldar entourage and apparently a pair of guardsmen as well? Horus, oh fuck, they came along. Lehman, full on chuckling again. I fucking love these two. As they walked the halls, he saw how the other members of the entourage studied their surroundings. Many appeared to scoff or dismiss the things going on around them, no doubt they were criticizing the culture and architecture, again, like all craft-worlders before them. Why couldn't they be more like their Exodite cousins? Accepting and simply grateful to be alive and have shelter? After walking down the hall, they arrived in the dining hall in which all present prime children took their meals. It was lavish and big enough to host the craft-worlders without offending or demeaning them. Please. Guilliman pointed to the chairs surrounding the tables even as he sat at the head on a massive throne-sized chair himself. The Eldar delegation did so, however. The two guardsmen came by after arguing about who would report to him apparently. The one with the blonde hair stepped forwards before saluting. Lord Regent, we have been ordered to report to you under the command of Lieutenant Durax of the Shrine World, Laphise. Main Garrison. Robut turned uninterestingly at them. Indeed. And what about? About how the Eldar delegation came through the Webway Gate, sir my lord. The blonde one continued to speak even as Guilliman sighed and looked back at said delegation. He was about to dismiss the two even as an aide came and whispered into his ear about the two guardsmen's lieutenants sending a hymnal of how patriotic and dutiful the two apparently were. Horus and Robut, facepalm. Sir, news, the Shrine World took a hit from a trail of daemons following the Eldar host. It has been dealt with by a nearby squad of Ultramarines. However, the garrison there has been hit heavily, particularly the NCOs and below, and is being rotated back here to Macragge in order to refit and refill its ranks. Guilliman nodded along, before glancing at the two guardsmen who were still standing at attention. Though he did not know it, but the two were torn between sighing in relief at leaving the war zone before it got worse, and the idea that they were about to be given a worse assignment. A lack of NCOs you say? Yes my lord. Horus, brother, no. Robut, it's the future me Horus. I can't do anything. Lehman, full on laughing yet again. Indeed. Guilliman spoke, turning his full attention to the two guardsmen. Your exploits and patriotism is commendable. And I have just received word of an opening in the regiment that you serve. He turned to his aide. These two will replace the vital missing cogs. I hereby raise both of you to the ranks of sergeant. You are to stay stationed here on Macragge as your regiment rotates back in for refit and I expect you to fulfill your new duties of training the recruits well. Dismissed. Lehman, AA promotion? Ha ha ha. Titus and Lucius both began to curse their luck, but then thought, well. They weren't leaving Macragge, just training people. It wasn't so bad. Maybe they could live a life in the rear and not see battle anymore. But what if? What if the prince caused another demonic incursion? They saluted at the Lord Regent and left to escape into their new fate. Maybe they could enjoy some time in peace and quiet. The bone singer leaned towards her fellow guardian, quietly speaking up to him, should we tell him that they are a couple of cowards? The guardian shook his head just barely, not wanting to correct the man who was literally holding their fate in his hands. Guilliman turned back to the, now seated, delegation. You have invoked the Treaty of Eden, thus, you are privy to it with full rights pertaining to your situation. But must first be aware of its statutes and agreed upon rules. Eldrad simply nodded and waved a hand for Guilliman to continue. As agreed upon in the treaty, you are being granted asylum immediately in the area of Imperium Secundus without question. With the granting of that asylum, you also agree upon the following of Ultramar law to its fullest effect and are expected to assimilate into society. He looked at every single Eldar at the table. Do you agree thus far? Emperor, nodding approvingly. Good terms, so far. Eldrad was ready for this and agreed. His entourage all had varying degrees of acceptance, while a couple stubbornly stayed quiet. They were all aware of how much the treaty favored the Imperium, even if they were the ones to help humanity during their worst moment. Some were still of the opinion that it was one Eldar woman who agreed to this and them following the treaty was akin to bending over for the Monkey. But what could they have done? In the end, the Eldar were the ones more desperate for their assistance, especially after the Silent Year. And in reality, it was as fair as it could be. So be it. Continuing onward, Farseer Eldrad will be granted quarters here in the fortress of Hera as pertains to his rank of Farseer and being a part of the Seer Council aboard Craft World Ulthwi. The rest shall be handed positions either elsewhere or given task and jobs in the Ildari sections of Makraj Magnus Civitas. Robert waved over a serf who activated a hololith embedded into the table that projected a map of said city that had been updated every month or so. You are free to venture between the two sides, as many of your brethren have so far. They studied the hololith, noting how disorganized and dare they even call it, haphazardly made the living blocks were. Some were doubting if this was for the best or not, others wondered if taking their chances out in the wilds was better. The few who didn't have their helmets on envied the ones who did, since their distress was starting to creep onto their sharp features. Rogel, the design irks my soul. Perturabo, and mine. Asterisk at this, the back door opened, and in came a custodes for the Emperor, but he took one look at the screen and nearly screeched. He thought it was the ugliest design he had ever seen, and as a master war mason, it insulted his very soul. He promptly turned straight around, waving his hands and shaking his head violently, all the while turning his flamer on to find some poor combat servitors to incinerate. Asterisk. Emperor, winces. He really didn't need to see that. Only marginally better than the webway. But it will do. Eldrad spoke. Good. Guilliman confirmed. Then there is only the matter of your position in all of this, Farseer. Eldrad straightened, knowing it was time for the real negotiations. Continue, please. As it so happens, we are currently lacking a position for the prince's tutor on his studies of the warp and his psychic prowess from the Ildari's side. Jagatai, you are far too smooth for your own good in this chapter, brother. Robot, I try. So. A glorified babysitter for the surrogate spawn of the prophet and the Lord Regent. How far he has fallen, to having to teach a child how to use their powers. But he did recall how the child shone, recalling more of how the seers prophesied that he who shines brightest would emerge during the darkest of times between humanity and Ildari. He sat back, fingertips creating a web on his lap. Ah, so I am to become a tutor to a small child on the mysteries of the warp? Shall I send you my resume and my extensive years on the path of the educator? References as well. Guilliman leaned back into his throne. It would be very helpful. Of course, as his father, I am relegated to inform you that the prince is the living embodiment and host of the Astronomicon. He spoke with a smile. Emperor, reminds me of when Eldrad was friends with me and everyone else. Always made sure to get a pic of him in those awful sweaters. But it is good to see him actually joking with Robert there. Thinks maybe I should. Or no? Maybe? Sanguinius, sweaters. Fulgrim, what? Eldrad nodded dramatically. I see. That is why he shines as brightly as a giant lit beacon used to guide ships through the great sea of the warp. Never would have guessed. I suppose you never would have guessed that he has the power, when pushed to a breaking point, to reroute the Astronomicon and make it a physical projection outside of his body, causing massive warp tears and anything it hits to be killed immediately, its soul being vaporized. Robert thought for a second before clicking his tongue as if he forgot something barely worth mentioning, that being his last tutor. Emperor, well. I did make the thing powerful. So the Astronomicon that you use to guide ships through the warp is stuck on the soul of a child who looks to be only barely out of his first cycle, that when he gets to a point, projects it in the materium causing warp tears and the vaporization of those who meet his ire. Eldrad summarized as his entourage behind him shared horrified glances, now suddenly realizing how much danger they were in. Indeed. He is also extremely clumsy and when his emotions get pushed to a certain edge, has the ability to summon daemons by accident. At this point, many of the Eldar were wondering if it was too late to run for the wild space and try their luck in Tau space. They heard it was practically free real estate there, what with all the dead Tau and all the free worlds ripe for picking. That is of course if one ignored the massive presence of the plague marines, orcs, and sleeping tyrannids. All the while, Eldrad felt a large grin grow on his face. This was a very interesting development. One he was beyond glad to be a part of. After raising 3 full Ildari children to adulthood, I don't see much wrong here. Sounds wonderful. When do I start? Emperor, whispers it's free real estate. Mort Arian, the Tau got munched. Good. Lion, yes, the fishmen. None of us even cared about them, so nothing of value was lost. Not like they were important or anything. Horus, well, there was that one. Faring? Magnus, Commander Farza'ite. Horus, yet. That guy. Wonder if he made it. Lion, I doubt it. The Eldar delegation felt their jaws drop. Was he insane? Right away, so you can finally be of some use. Guilliman said, not being able to take it anymore as he finally began to laugh. Eldrad began to laugh as well, the two of them full on enjoying the reunion. I admit, I was surprised, but it is elating to be on good terms with your family again. Same to you, old friend. Guilliman nodded as they all stood. To a brighter future then. Eldrad spoke, reaching out and shaking the Lord Regent's hand. To a brighter future. Guilliman echoed as the VID shut off. The VID clicked empty, the feed dying away as Lame began the cleaning rituals. He also did take time to run some diagnostics, wondering if the machine spirit was displeased, or if there was something wrong with the projector. It was definitely not made for playing interdimensional vids of the future, and it played a lot of them over these past 7 weeks. Wow! Did that one drag on forever? The Emperor groaned, rubbing at his face exasperatedly. He was so done with everything so far. What are you talking about? Magnus intervened. It was like an hour at most. The VID yet, US talking. Much longer. No, not really. Magnus supplied, eye squinting at his father as he tried to understand what made him antsy and angry this time. But well, to be fair, there was Robut's sucking face, infant torture, an extremely incompetent guardsman with Ildari arrogance. And Eldrad. Perhaps there was only so much their father could take in one day. Father, Horus spoke up, a custodes came in earlier, but ran off not long after he came in. Do you think he had anything important to say to you? The Emperor waved it off, not getting up from his throne. He was comfy. Don't worry about it, Horus. If it was urgent, they would have spoken up anyway and told me. He shrugged, what part did he run from, exactly? Rogel was the one to answer, it was the part where future Robut showed the Ildari entourage the hololith of Makraj Magnus Civitas. My normal calm was interrupted by the terrible planning and lack of foresight in the planning of the city. He ran out at this part, due to his nature as a master warmason like myself and Perturabo. Perturabo blinked and eyed Rogel shrewdly, you actually complimenting me? Yes. Rogel intoned, he hated it as much as we did and retreated to most likely take his rage out on some combat servitors. The Emperor nodded, of course Rogel would be the one to know. I see. I will check on him later then. On that note, Robut, Magnus. Get to work. The two aforementioned Primarchs glanced at each other before towards their father. Yes. You two complained the most about the piles being disorganized. So, hop to it. You two can pick the next one we watch. And make it snappy. Precious Hawk Boy can't stand not getting his binging content. Sanguinius blushed at this as Robert and Magnus let out long-suffering sighs and went to work. Sanguinius definitely did not have a problem with wanting to see the next piece of content. At all. He just hated cliffhangers. That's all. He doesn't have a problem.